right now with our Federal Reserve note?
What is going on right now is that paper currency never works. It always crashes. And we are just at the moment that we have the time to convert that to treasury dollars. And this is exactly what Ronald Reagan was trying to do when he did a study, and he found out that 100% of our income taxes are leaving the country and going to the bankers. That's what John F. Kennedy was doing. And John F. Kennedy, he had accessed the wealth of the world and the gold that we're supposed to have. The Federal Reserve does not have the gold that the United States is supposed to have backing its dollar. That gold is there, but it's not going to be backing the Federal Reserve note. And so we have got to transition very quickly to the real currency in the United States. And Ronald Reagan printed that currency. It's there waiting for us. And we just simply have to exchange it, very simply. And we will not have any economic dislocation. Otherwise, you better believe this country is not going to have any more military might. If we stay with the Federal Reserve note, we will have lost our standing completely. As it is right now, the Federal Reserve note is no longer what's called international reserve currency. That means that the countries are using other currency in their international trade. The BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, that's 25% of trade. They're not using the dollars with their own trade. And 133 developing countries, that's the group of 77, they've announced that they're not going to be using dollars in their international trade. Now, one of the things, getting back to what I was doing at Yale Law School, between my junior and senior year, I wrote a paper on how that coalition of the developing countries, called the G77, was developing. I went to the UN between my junior and senior year at Yale, and I wrote a 200-page paper on that. I think that was also one of the reasons I was brought to the World Bank by Ibrahim Shihada. He was an Egyptian lawyer who had been the general counsel of OPEC. That's the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. And he might have realized that I was somebody who was very interested in the real mission of the World Bank. Now, the World Bank has been hijacked. It's been hijacked by a group that is called the Network of Global Corporate Control. It is a group that was studied by 3 mathematicians at the Federal Institute of Technology, and they found out that this group controls 40% of the assets of the 43,000 companies on the capital markets. And what it does is it takes the same directors and puts them on interlocking boards. So they have 10 times their economic might. And they didn't think anybody was going to find out about them, but we did. And this group has come into the World Bank, and it's also come into the United States, and it's done something called state capture. It is buying off the politicians. What they do is they print dollars, and they spend them to buy the politicians. They get to keep the difference between the amount that it costs to print the dollars and the face amount of the dollar. And then, to add insult to injury, they charge us interest on country debt. That's called usury. That means that people are working 3 months out of the year to pay the bankers on a scam. They have no right to keep that seniorage, and any president that tried to end that scam, that's what happened to Abraham Lincoln. That's why he was shot. So any president that tried to end that scam was sent off. And people have said, well, Karen, if they can get rid of presidents, how come you're still around? And the reason is, first of all, because I have just been following the rule of law. It wasn't very easy to get rid of me. And frankly, the problem isn't something that I've invented. It's a real problem. So if you get rid of me, you haven't gotten rid of the problem. You have just exposed the problem. And they were trying to cover it up. So it wasn't going to help them.
What is going on right now?
This was posted at 22:01:56. Trump's being specific now. I'm sorry. It's not a coincidence. Great speech from the new speaker. I looked at off to a terrific start because you know what? His 3 exclamation points draw me to that. And I think that's why he does it. But I don't know. But let's see what I get. Patriots, stand ready. Trust the mission. Trust your heart. The rise of the Phoenix. No, that's not a bad thing. Look it up. His timestamp. Panic in DC. Break it down, though. Break it down. Let's do that. So drop 22, part of that timestamp. You need to understand this drop. If you don't know what this drop refers to, you need to. It is the most important drop to save our republic. This drop means everything. Okay, who controls the National Guard? Why was the National Guard recently activated? Do you know what former president used the military to save the republic and what occurred exactly? Look it up. You need to know this. This is so important. It's happening right in front of our faces, and you need to know what this means, okay? The biggest drop to ever be provided. Study and prepare. Clean and swift. Let's look at drop 1. 2201 was a timestamp, remember? Let's look at 1. I'm sure we all know it, but I don't know what's going to happen, but this is what it says. Hillary Clinton will be arrested, and guess what? October 30th this year is a Monday. I don't know. Let's see what happens. But there's one more thing. That timestamp, 2201 and 56 seconds. 56. What's 56? Does that ring a bell? Oh my God. What did we just elected a speaker, didn't we? What? He's the 56th speaker. Mike Johnson elected the 56th speaker of the House. Let's go. Woo-hoo.
Every pound that if you weigh 8 pounds of bird, you have 8 pounds of gold set aside for you.
Assigned to you
By the crown.
in England,
Yes.
in the United States,
Yes.
by the treasury.
Yes. Because the United States is owned by the crown.
Okay. So let's say there's 200 odd nations of the world. There's hundreds and hundreds small island states, but it's about 200 nation states, big nation states. They are all of them operations extension of the British Crown.
Yes.
And the British Crown.
Warning to utility companies. Notice and warning to all utility companies for embezzlement, theft by deception and extortion failing to discharge all debts pursuant to 73rd Congress. Sess 1. CHS 4849. June 5th. 6. 1933 HJR 192 HR 1491 Public Law 148 Stat 1 Public Law 10 Chapter 48 Stat 112 Public Law 73 1040 Stat 411 Trading with the Enemy ACT TWI OCT 6. 1917 but not limited to. Since House Joint Resolution 192, HJR 192, Public Law 7310, was passed in 1933, we have only had debt, because all property and gold was seized by the government as collateral in the bankruptcy of the United States. In 1863 the first Bank Act was passed. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, or OCC, is a U.S. federal agency established by the National Currency Act of 1863 and serves to charter, regulate, and supervise all national banks and the federal branches and agencies of foreign banks in the United States. The OCC was created by Abraham Lincoln to fund the American Civil War but was later transformed into a regulatory agency to instill confidence in the national banking system and protect consumers from misleading business practices. The Lieber Code, or General Order 100, was also created by Abraham Lincoln in 1863. The National Bank Act, Chapter 58, 12 Stat 665, February 25, 1863, was a United States federal law that established a system of national charters for banks, the United States national banks. It encouraged development of a national currency based on bank holdings of U.S. Treasury securities, the so-called national bank notes. It also established the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency OCC as part of the Department of the Treasury. This was to establish a national security holding body for the existence of the monetary policy of the state. The act, together with Abraham Lincoln's issuance of greenbacks, raised money for the federal government in the American Civil War by enticing banks to buy federal bonds and taxing state bank-issued currency out of existence. The law proved defective and was replaced by the National Bank Act of 1864. The money was used to fund the Union Army in the fight against the Confederacy. This authorized the OCC to examine and regulate nationally chartered banks. Notice and warning to utility companies 1 of August 3, 2016. Notice and warning to utility companies. The above only partially begins to include the historical records and other acts of Congress that proves the U.S. bankruptcy of 1933 and that there is no money. Only credit that the American people are the creditors. All utilities companies knowingly have been sending their customers dividends but, in fact, making each recipient believe that dividend was an invoice for services provided by the utilities companies. The utilities companies have mailed through the U.S. mail an intentional misrepresentation of facts, unfair business practices, and each utility company and agents thereof have knowingly with forethought and malice created a fraudulent debt, defrauding the creditor, that is the recipient of said dividends, that the utilities companies lead the recipient to believe through deception is an invoice. The utilities companies in turn then extract through extortionate measures payment from the customers instead of the utilities companies informing those same recipients that this dividend is in actuality payment to the recipient as a charged-off debt pursuant to the incorporated in entirety documented evidence provided herein. All utility companies have thus created a convertible and fraudulent debt. See analysis of a country embezzle. All utilities companies have failed to pay off any of the public debt but rather unlawfully redirected ill-gotten gains into private corporate accounts through embezzlement, theft by deception, fraudulent conversion, and in violation to each all incorporated in entirety laws established through and as a result of the U.S. bankruptcy of 1933, wherein there is no money, only banknotes which are but only a promise to pay. Thus all debts are to be discharged as agreed, but the utilities companies and banks, through their greed, have not discharged any debt, fraudulently making the utility customer deeper in debt by utilities companies' use of banknotes or promissory notes that the utilities companies add to the public debt side of the books rather than discharging the debts as stipulated in public laws, House resolutions, and House joint resolutions. Additionally, the alleged invoices sent to every recipient is a dividend and or a coupon to the recipient. The utilities companies all know this to be a fact. The comptroller of the currency also knows all of the above to be irrefutable facts, but is acting as a money laundering agency by for through the privately owned Federal Reserve, in Houston, Texas, et al. The comptroller of the currency at county, state, and federal level all know the incorporated documents and testimony to be true, but have yet to discharge any of the public debt, therefore have misappropriated funds through embezzlement, theft by deception, obtaining money through false pretenses, extortion and other predicate acts since the date of comptroller of the currency inception of 1863. All utility companies, which are private for-profit corporations, regardless of location, are knowingly participating in the fraud and Ponzi scheme with the intent to fraudulently convert this. Notice and warning to utility companies 2 of August 3, 2016. Notice and warning to utility companies and every other country's wealth into private industry accounts by fraudulent conveyance, embezzlement, theft by deception, creating fraudulent debts, Ponzi scheme and fraud through the U.S. mail. Just for starters, every judge and every attorney in America, especially those who hold positions with several direct connections into the utilities companies' bank accounts and acting as attorneys for the banks, most presumably in all other countries as well, since they all get their instructions from England, the same place that all the banks get their instructions through the comptroller of the currency headquarters in London, England, each knowing the above and incorporated to be true, since they are well versed on the U.S. bankruptcy of 1933 and that America still remains to date in a state of emergency and operates under English law, though that also is supposed to be a well-kept secret. This means there is no money. It further means that since there is no money, American signatures are used as the credit to run this country. That in turn means that it is the American people whom are the creditors, not the debtors, as the banks and utilities companies would like everyone to believe. The utilities companies have been operating with this knowledge with intent, forethought and malice to commit the crimes mentioned herein but not limited to. Due to the facts incorporated herein in entirety, all debts are to be charged off, including but not limited to every alleged utilities invoice, which each all have actually been a dividend, for which every utilities company embezzled payment through fraud, using extortion and other threats to discontinue service if payment is not made. These alleged invoices were dividends that every utilities company using deceptive business practice lead the public to believe were debts owed, when it is a fact that it is the utilities companies who owe the American public all those fraudulently received ill-gotten gains plus the interest.
Only.
Pay close attention. Most of you have already heard this or heard me speak of it, but it bears mentioning tonight. Here we go. Quote, there will be a liquidity and credit crisis as banks and online payment systems are about to suffer a huge outage in Europe and the United States. There are already talks of a liquidity and credit crisis happening in inner circles. Saturday, banks and online payment systems will suffer an outage in Europe and the United States, spreading worldwide. Talks of liquidity and credit crisis happening will spread rapidly. Sunday, customers will try to get money out of their banks but will be turned away. Talk of bank runs on Twitter and Facebook will promptly be banned. Late Sunday night, Eurozone banks will suffer a liquidity issue and fail critical margin levels. Monday, 26th, liquidity crisis contagion will spread to the United States. Financial instruments, much like those used by Archegos, will blow up across the entire financial sector. Bank of America, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs are rumored to be insolvent along with others. The super rich will try to get their money out of the banks only to be denied. Stock market will drop 20% and is closed for the day. Tether and other stable coins will fail, causing cryptocurrencies to crash as they become illiquid. Short midterm is that cryptocurrencies will become worthless. Tuesday, Eurozone total meltdown. Bank deposits are bailed, and most people will lose all of their money. Social protests erupt in Europe. The U.S. stock market will drop another 20% before being closed again. Hedge funds will collapse, and banks are stuck with meme stock shorts, which will be revealed to be in the trillions. Banks fail critical margin levels, and the DTCC will be forced to cover the shorts. The DTCC insurance policy will fail, as the insurers never had the money to begin with. The Federal Reserve is stuck with the bag. Wednesday, stock market drops another 20% before getting stopped again. Subprime finally hits and housing prices crash by 50% or more. Meme stock, silver, gold, commodity trading is frozen and halted, but this will only make the problem worse. Dollar insolvency is all over the international news, while silver and gold skyrocket. U.S. bonds will be dumped, sending interest rates into the stratosphere. Mainstream media will now blare the Great Depression 2.0 and that the collapse is finally here. Thursday, U.S. government will begin to collapse and pressure on the current administration to resign. Stock market will drop even more for a total of 85 to 96% since the crash on Monday. Grocery stores will now be empty and supply chains completely break down. Rumors of a coup against the U.S. government will begin to pick up on social media and gain public approval. Massive protests against the government, Wall Street, and the banks will erupt. Police will be deployed in an attempt to brutally suppress the protests, but they will be unsuccessful. By Friday, voter fraud data is going to be dumped on the internet. This will add fuel to the fire. This will reveal stolen elections going all the way back 40 years. Governments will go into hiding. Meme stock and silver commodity shorts issues, breaches, international media, and heads of state will demand answers from the U.S. because they are too exposed through their weird financial instruments. BRICS will pick up speed to replace the dollar then and now. The dollar is declared non grata in many countries in the world, and legislation fast-tracked to convert dollar denomination debt to other fiat to prevent a total credit freeze.
Religious documents pretty hard to swallow. It's very hard to swallow, saying basically that.
Do y'all remember Bob Lazar? It turned out that he wasn't lying after all, and his stories that he told back in the late 80s and early 90s ended up being true. This is for entertainment purposes only. Lazar talks about religion and the documents he read about humans being created by aliens. Religion is a very touchy topic, and this will upset a lot of people. But that's not the most interesting part. The most interesting part is when he talked about the human species being grown in a lab or genetically engineered. But you, be the judge.
Religion. You saw some other reports that religious documents pretty hard to swallow. It's very hard to swallow, saying basically that. basically we're a product of genetic engineering from someone. Yeah. Yeah, how can you just swallow that whole? Well, how can you swallow it? Well, it's easy to swallow things. You can put your hands on the touch and then work with it. You get into spiritual stuff and religion, and we were brought here, and this is sort of made by progressive corrections and evolution and that sort of thing, and where it shoots down a lot of the established religions, the Catholicism, and everything that essentially it's a tough thing to accept, and why without hardcore proof, why even bring it up. I guess the question more to deal with is you actually read a report that said this stuff. Well, yeah, the only hardcore thing is that there's extremely classified documents dealing with religion about that. Period. But why would there be any classified material dealing with religion? That's what other kind of classified? No, that wasn't the last one. I want to go back to the religion thing. I want you to say. Oh, that's so weird. That's a lot. I'm not asking you to say what you believe to be a fact. I'm asking you to say what you read in a report that is distributed at what may be the most top secret facility in the world. Okay. All right. It's so far out. All right, your objection has been noted. Okay. What does it say? That we're containers. That's how supposedly the alien put us. We are nothing but containers. Maybe containers of souls. You can come up with whatever theory you want, but we're containers, and that's how we're mentioned in the document. That religion was specifically created, so we have rules and regulations for the sole purpose of not damaging the containers. The soul. Meaning, well, the souls or the bodies, whatever, right? That's anyway, we're containers for souls that they're going to use in some other way. Right. And that they had something to do with different prophets and biblical figures. Yes. That supposedly Jesus and two other beings were genetically engineered. They were implanted in people on Earth in biblical times, and their births were closely monitored. Now, just some little connections to that my wife had brought up were in the Bible. They said that this star had followed Mary wherever she went, and that all UFO sightings always start out as people, well, gee, that looks like a bright star, and well, in fact, they said in the Bible, the brightest star in the sky followed her where she went, and just make little connections like that.
Hey guys, it is Sunday morning, guys. I hope you guys doing okay, guys. And just letting you know, guys, that we are definitely actually heading in the right direction this week. It's going to be a fantastic week, right? And I want you guys all to brace yourself, guys. Put on those seatbelt, guys. We are flying at warp speed, right? And I want to repeat again, the funds have been released, right? They're just on cloud at the moment, right? And they're going to be transferred to the QFS account. And what I've been told actually is that everything is from the QFS, right? And it's people won't actually realise that they're actually using a new banking system, right? You're not going to have a savings account and a QFS, just one account and a QFS account. You won't even realise it, right? Life's going to continue just normal, so not to scare people or confuse people, right? And the dollar bills and all that sort of thing is going to be a gold-backed currency, but is it going to be the same design for other countries? It might be the same design, you just don't realise it. You just won't realise that it's gold-backed currency. All right, so but gradually things are going to change. The Zara Gazara, he's going to come out actually by October, right? And that's when the whole sweep actually happens, right? And Yeah, it's going to be great. There's going to be an announcement with the Nazara Gazara is going to happen. We don't know how the announcement is going to be made, whether the mainstream media or the press or the president of the state is going to make the announcement. I really don't know. I just hope it's not by the decision. So everything is lined up actually for this coming week, okay? So I want you to brace yourself. Notification should be coming out hopefully by tomorrow, right? Tomorrow or the latest by Monday, right? And yeah, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for so many years, guys. Right? The Iraqis already guys, about what is it last week or the week before, right? Because it's gone international. The rate's gone national, not international. Now the rates are on forest should be coming out hopefully by tomorrow. Fingers crossed, right? And you will see that rate actually on the forest, and hopefully you guys can exchange and go to a redemption center and get the higher rate. And I'm not going to say anything if you want to go to the street rate, guys. That's up to you guys, right? You want to do that. All right, so that's what it is at the moment, guys. And I want you to brace yourself and just thank God actually for everything that's coming through, right? And just remember always, guys, you guys are the chosen people, right? You guys are the chosen people, and always say to you guys, leave them your operations. Don't do anything you shouldn't be doing because they are watching us. And I've said this many a time. They are watching us, right? And you know, unfortunately there are some people that are not going to finish the finish line because they did things they shouldn't have done, and they're going to get caught, right? Okay, so that's all I have to say to you guys. God bless you, right? I love you guys, and hopefully that opera should be coming out anytime right now. Take care. Bye bye.